This is News Bits on Fuxion TV. Here are the headlines. Nigeria's central bank governor suspended. Fresh fighting resumes in South Sudan. Anti-pornography legislation signed by Ugandan president. Judgment reserved in case of live broadcast of trial of Oscar Pistorius. Rwandan former mayor sentenced in Germany. Ethiopian Airline's co-pilot hijacks plane to seek Swiss asylum. These and more when we return. Stay tuned, we'll be back in a minute. Hello and thank you for joining me today on News Bits here on Fuxion TV. I'm Nikki Roberts. The judge hearing arguments for and against the live broadcast of the trial of South African Paralympian Oscar Pistorius has reserved judgment until next week. DSTV representative Frank Snickers was quoted as saying the most remarkable and revolutionary camera technology would be used at the trial, namely tiny spy cameras hanging from the ceiling of the courtroom. According to Snickers, the hanging cameras would ensure an unfiltered broadcast of the proceedings without any distortion. He further argued that the National Prosecuting Authority, NPA, has agreed to the live broadcast and will not be opposing the application under the condition that any witness who does not give consent to being televised will not be. The presiding judge also reserves the right to switch the cameras off if they were deemed to be disruptive or contrary to a fair trial. Pistorius' attorney, Kenneth Aldridge, said the witnesses and River Steenkamp's family object to the live broadcast of the case, claiming the witnesses feel they will be intimidated by the televising of their testimony, essentially leading to an unfair trial. He requested a ban on all televising of witness testimony, but agreed for opening statements and legal arguments to be broadcast live. MultiChoice previously announced that it will launch a dedicated DSTV channel for the duration of Pistorius' trial, providing 24-hour coverage, documentaries, profiles, and analysis connected to the case, which begins March 3rd. Pistorius is charged with murder in River Steenkamp's Valentine's Day shooting death approximately a year ago. The world-famous athlete, nicknamed the Blade Runner, subsequently testified in an affidavit read out by a lawyer at his bail hearing that he shot Steenkamp through a toilet cubicle door in a tragic accident, saying he mistook the 29-year-old model and law graduate for a dangerous intruder in his bathroom. Kenya's migration from analog to digital system of broadcast has been postponed until March 14th. The Court of Appeal in Kenya will give its judgment on a challenge to the planned migration by 3 media houses on December 23rd. The High Court had given the go-ahead for digital migration to proceed, which would have caused major television stations in the country to cease broadcasting. The Standard Group, Nation Media Group, and Royal Media Services, however, went to the Court of Appeal to challenge the decision. The 3 stations submitted that the process of digital migration should not be completed until the country's 3rd digital signal distribution license is allocated, saying technical and legal issues need to be dealt with first. They accused the government of failing to honor its agreement with broadcasters that no third party is allowed to broadcast another's content without permission. In its defense, the attorney for Communications Commission of Kenya, CCK, Kilonzo Wambua, pointed out that the media houses had been involved in the process as far back as 2004. The CCK accused the 3 media houses of hindering its campaigns on digital awareness by not publishing the materials intended for educating the public. He further said regional security is dependent on Kenya's digital migration as the country signed an agreement with Uganda, Tanzania that forces the 3 countries to make the digital crossover, and failure to comply would strain the tripartite relationship. Kenya was set to make the switch last December, and the final switch was to be finalized by June 2014. The Nigerian army has reported that suicide bombers are believed to have taken part in a major attack on the northern border town of Burma. The attack reportedly lasted for 5 hours Wednesday morning, leaving several people dead and the emir's palace burnt. Defense spokesman Major General Chris Olukolade reportedly said that the Burma assailants had used bombs and had attacked an army tank. He further said many insurgents had been killed but did not comment on civilians or military casualties. despite appeals made by Borno State Governor Kashim Shettima to the security forces calling for reinforcements and saying that the insurgents were better armed and better motivated than the security forces, the Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs, Donyo Kukbes, called these claims false and declared that the government is winning the war on terror. The activities of the insurgents will be terminated within the shortest possible time, he said. This year alone, 245 people have been killed by suspected Islamists and thousands more killed since Boko Haram began its uprising in 2009. President Yoweri Museveni in Uganda has reportedly signed into law an anti-pornography legislation that outlaws miniskirts and other types of revealing clothing. Ethics and Integrity Minister Simon Lokodo said Tuesday that it is now forbidden to wear any clothing that could be deemed sexually exciting. The new law covers a range of issues related to pornography, including child pornography, pornographic publications, and even suggestive music videos. The law makes it illegal to wear revealing clothing, including tops that show too much cleavage, and miniskirts defined as anything above the knee. Executive Director of Uganda Women's Network, Rita Achiro, said such legislated control over women's bodies sets a dangerous precedent for women's rights. She said such laws actually take a country like Uganda backwards in regards to women's empowerment, and this will eventually end up into actual total control of women. Short skirts are a common sight in Uganda, particularly among young women in the capital. Many Ugandan women say the dress code will be difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. The co-pilot of an Ethiopian Airlines plane flying from Addis Ababa to Rome has been arrested after hijacking the aircraft and flying it to Switzerland. The hijacker, identified by officials as Haile Medine Abera, who wanted to seek asylum in Switzerland, reportedly waited for the pilot to go to the toilet before locking himself in the cockpit. He radioed Geneva to request permission for an emergency refueling before setting off an alarm indicating that the plane had been hijacked. Upon landing, he ran towards the police and immediately identified himself as the co-pilot and hijacker. He was unarmed. Passengers were able to leave the plane about an hour later, and the airline confirmed that all 202 passengers and crew were safe. Authorities have said the chances of his being granted asylum were slim because there is no connection between asylum and committing a crime to get to Switzerland. President Barack Obama has warned Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni that enacting an anti-gay law would complicate relations with the U.S., causing a review of U.S. relations with Uganda. The United States is one of the largest donors of foreign aid to Uganda. Last month, Mr. Museveni had refused to sign the bill, but on Friday he indicated that he would approve it shortly after receiving scientific advice. Government spokesman Ofuono Opondo said a team of Ugandan scientists, asked by the president for a report on homosexuality, had told Mr. Museveni that there is no definitive gene responsible for homosexuality. Uganda already has legislation banning gay sex between men, but the proposed law sharply tightens restrictions and covers lesbians for the first time. Homosexuality is taboo in many African countries and is illegal in 37 nations on the continent. A German court has sentenced a Rwandan former mayor, Onesphore Rwabukombe, to 14 years in prison for his role in Rwanda's 1994 genocide. The 56-year-old was found guilty of ordering the killing of hundreds of people in a church where they had sought refuge in Kiziguro. He had been living as a political refugee in Germany since 2002. It is the first trial connected with the Rwandan genocide to take place in Germany. The trial, which lasted for 3 years, heard how about 1,200 people were killed on April 11, 1994 at the church in Kiziguro in eastern Rwanda, where Rwabukombe was then mayor. Systematic killing of Tutsis and moderate Hutus resulted in more than 3 months of violence in which about 800,000 people died. Heavy fighting erupted near the airport in Central African Republic's capital Bangui on Wednesday as Christian militia blocked an attempt to evacuate Muslims, disrupting a visit by a top United Nations aid official. The former French colony has been gripped by cycles of inter-religious violence despite the deployment of about 6,000 African and 1,600 French peacekeepers to the region to curtail the violence. This has led some observers to believe the spiraling ethnic violence risked slipping into genocide. Violence targeting Muslim civilians has escalated since Seleka leader Michel Djotodia quit power in January under international pressure. A UN official said the fighting had prevented Valerie Amos, UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, from traveling to the north of the country, where violence between Muslims and Christians has displaced thousands of civilians and left villages abandoned. A news just reaching us reports that Nigeria's Central Bank Governor Lamido Sanusi has been suspended by President Goodluck Jonathan for financial recklessness and misconduct. Sanusi, who was due to end his term in June, had been presenting evidence to Parliament where he showed the state oil company, Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, failed to remit $20 billion that it owed to federal government reserves. NNPC has repeatedly denied Sanusi's allegations. Mr. Sanusi is widely respected after undertaking reforms to the banking sector since his appointment in 2009. He reportedly said he would challenge his suspension in order to preserve the central bank's independence, and further that he is proud of his own record. Foreign exchange, bond, and money markets have stopped trading because of the uncertainty caused by the suspension. Fresh fighting has broken out in South Sudan's Upper Nile state in spite of a ceasefire agreement signed in January by the government and rebels. Both sides have accused each other of starting the violence in Malakal, the capital of Upper Nile state. An opening ceremony for the new phase of negotiations was officially initiated last Tuesday in Addis Ababa. The two sides have not yet resumed direct talks after President Salva Kiir failed to meet the demands of the rebels. The clashes will again fuel concerns over the security of oil fields in the northern part of the country, and the international community has repeatedly urged both sides to respect the ceasefire and to start serious talks aimed at finding a political solution. A popular slang word which expresses disapproval in Ghana's main language account has been banned in Parliament. Tria was used repeatedly during parliamentary debates, leading Speaker Edward Doe Ajaho to ban it in the chamber after its use reportedly disrupted proceedings. The word became even more popular after a video went viral of an official angrily saying, "Who said Tria?" after being heckled during a speech outside a hospital. The ban, as expected, has inspired both debate and mockery, with some saying it is ridiculous that Parliament was even debating a ban on the word. Others say the ban comes in time to stop politicians from shouting Tria at President John Mahama in his State of the Nation address next week. And in sports this week, Jamaica, the Caribbean nation best known for reggae and dreadlocks, are well on their way to earning respect as the only tropical nation to be in the winter sport of bobsledding. Led by driver Winston Watts, Jamaica qualified for the 2014 Winter Olympics in the two-man competition, finishing 29th of 30 teams after their run on Monday. The team first gained fame during their debut in the 1988 Winter Olympic Games in Calgary, Canada, where they were seen as underdogs. Winston Watts, having competed in 4 more Winter Olympics since then, said, "I'm old as dirt, but what I want more is one more run." We certainly hope his dreams come true, and congratulations to the Jamaican bobsled team for effort and consistency. That's all the news we have for you on this edition of News Bits. Join us again next time. Until then, stay safe.